Okay, so I've been watching the Georgia hearing all day. I'm going to watch the rest of it after I'm done recording this, but I wanted to take some time to put my thoughts down while they're still fresh. The big takeaway from today is that they pretty much presented video evidence of fraud. This is big deal. This is your smoking gun. This is the accusations that witnesses have laid out in their affidavits, confirmed by security cameras. And so we've heard the story on election night about the supposed water main break in Fulton County, Georgia, that led to them having to stop counting ballots, to send everybody home and say, okay, we're going to start up again in the morning. And then after everyone leaving, supposedly they kept counting through the night for some time. And that, of course, is very suspicious because, you would tell all the observers to go home, don't look, and then we're going to keep counting. Why would you lie and try and get the observers out of there unless you're trying to cheat? It's the same story like with what happened in Detroit, just less openly aggressive and more deceitful. In Detroit, they just had the police haul the observers out of there if they, if they spoke up and said anything. In Georgia, they tricked these people into leaving. And before we had just had them, stating this in affidavits. Well, now, as of today, there is video evidence. The security camera footage from the State Farm Arena shows that around like 10:30ish at night on election night, the observers and the media leave. Everyone stops. They sit, at their tables for a few minutes, and then after some time goes by, the poll workers start pulling boxes out from underneath the tables, which seem to have been stashed there earlier in the day, and start running those paper ballots through the machine. And from what I understand, the estimate is that in the 2 hours that this was going on with no observation, they could have processed between 12 and 18,000 ballots. And so that is right around the margin of victory. On the low end, it's right at the margin of victory, and on the high end, it's over the margin of victory. And so to me, this alone is enough to overturn the results of the election in Georgia. This is all you need to see. This doesn't need to have happened in any other tabulation center in any other county, because enough were done here without proper observation, in a deceitful manner, trying to hide the counting process from the observers, that no honest judge, and that's a big caveat there, an honest judge, could claim that this was a free or fair election where you had proper observation. If you're tricking your observers into leaving and then counting with them not absent, without the public being able to witness what's going on, well, then that's illegitimate. And whether you actually cheated or not, the reason why these safeguards exist are to keep people from cheating. It's to make sure that people don't have the opportunity to cheat. And so if you are doing these things, if you're purposefully lying to create opportunity for cheating, it's a pretty fair assumption for people to think that, well, you must be cheating. And this combined with the witnesses who attest to the fact that there were ballots that appeared to be printed out on paper that were supposedly absentee ballots but had no creases in them, and and other things. I think that the evidence in Georgia is, it's arguably more solid than Michigan. And I thought Michigan, that to me was a slam dunk. I mean, you have person after person in Michigan talking about how they were kicked out of the center for challenging stuff, describing votes that absolutely should have been thrown out that were counted, and when they challenged this, they were ejected from the whole situation. But I mean, in Georgia, it's there, it's on tape. You can't make that up. And these were not, and apparently the poll workers did not know that they were being recorded, because this was not at a government building. This was at the State Farm Arena that they were renting to do all of this work. And so the State Farm Arena has cameras that I guess the Trump's lawyers in Georgia were able to subpoena and get them to turn over the recordings. Now, the response to this from the left, because there has been a response, is that, well, there was one. It's false to say that there was no observer, because there's this guy in a blue shirt and he works for the Secretary of State, and so there's your observer. And it's like, well, wait, you mean there was a government election worker who was supposed to be being the independent observer over the government election workers? How does that make any sense? If the government is allowed to appoint its own observers, if this is kind of like where the like internal affairs with the police, where they police themselves, I mean, that's a joke. Obviously, requiring observation, the right to observation for an election, that's supposed to be guaranteed to independent observers, to people who are not a part of the process, for people who don't work for the state. This is supposed to be partisans or independent people who are there to monitor the integrity of the election. And so, no, having someone from the Secretary of State's office, that's no better than just having the poll workers themselves. What even is the difference? Saying that they work for the local government versus the state government, that's no difference there. Now, unfortunately, after this, Rudy Giuliani got up and he brought up two witnesses that hurt the case in Georgia in front of the legislatures here, because they got up and talked for a while about Dominion. And I thought that the two Democratic women on the committee they were not able to counter the video at all. Actually, I'll get to that. One of the Democratic women made a total fool of herself, and she said, "Well, this has already been debunked. This was debunked." And she asked, so given that the Secretary of State debunked what you're saying, what evidence do you have to support your claim that ballots were counted without observers? And she said, "I just showed you the video." Like, that's the evidence. What do you mean, where's the evidence? It's right in front of you. Look at the screen. They told the people to leave, the Republican observers left, and then they started counting ballots again. That's the evidence. And then she just threw a hissy fit. So that was funny. Made the Democrat look very bad. And so the early on parts of this was they hit it out of the park. I thought it was the best of any of the hearings I've seen so far. Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan. This was the best I've seen. But then they brought in the Dominion guy, or not a guy who worked for Dominion, but a guy who was testifying about Dominion. It was that colonel who was at the Arizona hearing, and the Democrats asked him, hey, we did a hand recount after the election, so we didn't use the Dominion machines to tabulate those results, and Biden still won. So, if your whole argument is that there's some kind of algorithm that could be applied to switch votes from Trump to Biden digitally that doesn't reflect the paper ballots, wouldn't that be remedied by doing a hand recount? And that's 100% true. And that's actually something that Robert Barnes has been pointing out from the beginning. Which again, if those of you who don't follow his stuff and are keeping up with him on YouTube, he is since before the election been pretty much my go-to guy when it comes to the fraud. Him and Richard Barris, I found him through Richard Barris. He pointed this out, at the time of the hand recount, that at that point you need to stop talking about Dominion machines in Georgia, because that's why the Georgia Secretary of State did the hand recount, was to take that off the table, so that anyone who's bringing up the Dominion stuff just looks like a fool. And obviously this guy, when he was talking about, stuff that he had seen in other states, and when asked for specific stuff about Georgia, this colonel guy didn't have anything specific to Georgia. And so, to me, the Democrats won that exchange. I don't see why Rudy had to, bring that up. I mean, how do you not see that coming? At least have a response. If there is some genuine response as to why doing the hand recount did not remedy the problems with the Dominion machines, I'd be happy to hear it, because I don't know how they work. It might be that there are still problems. Like, I don't know if the ballots, for example, that they are recounting, if those are just the printouts from the machine, or if these are paper ballots that were filled out by voters. I think they're paper ballots filled out by voters, though. So that's about where we're at. I'm going to keep watching the rest of the hearing. I was just starting to watch the woman who was talking about the ballots that appeared to have been printed with the perfectly filled in holes, with no creases in the ballot from being folded into an envelope. And all of that, again, sounds very promising, because to me, what makes the most sense is that they had that ahead of time. This is what seems to be the best explanation as to how this election could have been defrauded in Georgia. They have ballots that they filled out ahead of time, stowed away somewhere, like under the tables, and depending on how much they needed to make up for whatever Trump's margin of victory was, if he ended up winning, in the real votes, they would just take out enough votes from their stash, run those through the machine when nobody was looking, to put Biden over the edge. This kind of seems to be what the story in a lot of these different states. That's why you have to go after the observation. That's why them stonewalling observers and signature match checks and all these things is so important, because this is how you steal the election if you're going to do it. The Dominion stuff can be resolved by hand recount. So that to me just seems like a less likely vector of fraud. It is a potential, but it is something that once you do a hand recount, I don't see how you can say that. You can say that it's on election night. If nobody ever checks, you could hack a voting machine and completely change the numbers. If nobody ever looks at if nobody ever does a hand count, then they'll be none the wiser. But since a hand count was done in this particular state, I don't see how you can continue to make that case. So it's too bad that such striking evidence had to be somewhat dulled by that blunder. But nonetheless, it doesn't make the video evidence any less compelling. It doesn't make the video evidence less true. And no matter whether you believe that the Democrats cheated in that case or not, there's no good explanation as to why you would lie and tell all of the Republican observers and the media to go home and then keep counting behind their back. There's nothing, there's no innocent explanation there that I've found. Oh, and the whole water main story turned out to be a fraud in and of itself. Apparently it wasn't a water main that broke. There was a leaky pipe on an upper floor in the building, and that leak had been fixed by like 8 a.m. that morning. It had only started at 6 a.m. that morning, so by 10:30 at night, there was no leak, from what we're being told by I believe the chairman of the Fulton County Commission, who, by the way, is not someone who's alleging that there was any election fraud. I believe he said that he would give their election integrity an A+. So that's today's update. If you gain anything value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button, sharing this video, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.